Hi, I'm Mason Marangella from Vertex Effects, and today we're looking at my new pedal board. Believe it or not, for as many years as I've been doctoring rigs, I've had very few pedal boards of my own, and this is one of the first I've built in a long time, kind of based on stuff that I've been using a lot, that I'm pretty familiar with, and that I seem to keep coming back to no matter how many pieces of gear and pedals go through my hands. I know for a lot of you, it's just a revolving door of pedals as it is for me, and these are just kind of the things that I settled on. So I wanted to take this opportunity today to not only tell you about the gear that I'm using on my personal rig, but why I chose it, why I vetted it, and also some pedal board best practices that I implemented on this board in order to keep it quiet and to give me the most versatility as possible. So let's take a look at just the platform itself that we've built this thing on. This is one of our travel light pedal boards, 17 inches by 10 inches. Now, we do use and implement a hinge riser system on all of our Vertex pedal boards, which is either you can buy it with this already included, or you can buy them separately depending on whether you want to retrofit it to a current board or another board, or whatever it is. What I really like about this is in order to normally fit this number of pedals, I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, a buffer underneath there, 10, and 2 power supplies. I'd ordinarily have to be on a much deeper pedal board than this, but because I have this hinged riser, I can get another platform of pedals. I have easy access to these where they're about 2 inches above the first row, so I can easily get to whatever I need, and I'm able to fit a ton of pedals in a small space, hide my power supply underneath the riser, hide my buffer and interface underneath the riser. Just gives me a ton of real estate where I can really get the most tone per square inch. And with these smaller boards, you really don't need a switcher because, again, once you consider the space of your power supply, the space of any sort of buffering or any sort of patch bay that you might be using for your rig, that pretty much eats up underneath the riser. And then it just gives me all the rest of the space to use to put all my pedals in series if I want to do that. Of course, you could use a switcher here, but you don't need to use a switcher in order to optimize your space, especially with these smaller boards like what I have here. Now, I always like to talk about the holy trinity of tone, and we've certainly implemented that here. Now, what is the holy trinity of tone? First of all, it's low noise, high quality soldered cables. Throughout the whole entire rig, I'm using Mogami 2314 with soldered square plug ends SPS4 and SP400. The second part of the 3 pillars of the trinity of tone is high quality input and output buffers. That means the first thing that the guitar plugs into is an input buffer. Equally, the very last thing before the pedal board goes to the amplifier is an output buffer. So no matter what's happening on the pedal board, you have the input impedance that's going to be solid. It's giving the guitar and the guitar pickups the loading that it expects to see ordinarily when it's plugged into an amplifier. Equally, that very last cable, that's usually the longest cable of any individual line on the pedal board, is given a nice, high-quality, low-impedance output to go all the way back to the input of the amplifier. And again, I always recommend choosing input and output buffers with the spec of 1 meg input impedance and 100 ohm output impedance as kind of being a good baseline to determine the quality of a buffer. If you don't see those specifications published, or there isn't any specification at all with a lot of these buffers out there, that's something that you just want to pass on by and not work with. If they're not publishing that specification, it would be like having an automobile manufacturer say that they had a car that had the best crash test ratings out there, but then refusing to publish the data and the results to prove that. You definitely want to make sure that it's falling within that spec, so do check that out when you're looking for a buffer. The last pillar of the trinity of tone is having a high quality switch mode power supply. Now, a lot of the old power supplies that a lot of us know and love, the early versions of the Voodoo Lab pedal power, those are what's called a linear power supply. It's using a toroid transformer or a C-core or an R-core transformer to be able to provide the power to everything that's needed. Now, these transformers could often create a lot of EMF or electromagnetic fields if this was put too close in proximity to some of your devices, especially on devices that would sit right on top of the power supply with some of the larger brand manufacturers' boards where the power supply is sitting right underneath the pedals. You often would have a lot of issues with that unless you had one of the versions that had steel, which does provide some electromagnetic shielding from the chassis itself. But subsequent versions and later versions with higher power and more current move to aluminum, and those don't have any electromagnetic shielding, so you would have real problems there by putting pedals too close to that power supply. This is why I say get switch mode power supplies like what I have here. I have a beautiful Chox power supply, and I actually have 2 of them. I have a Chox DC7 and a Chox 4. I'm using those to give every single one of my devices isolated power. And the great thing about those power supplies is not only does it have variable voltage on every single output that I can range from 9 all the way up to 18, it also gives me a readout of how much of the total current that I've used amongst all of the pedals, which is really, really handy, so you always know where you are. So I highly recommend isolated switch mode power supplies like I have here. Now let's get into the signal path. We have some really cool stuff here. Some of this is stuff that's been around for a long time. Some of this is kind of newer stuff. And I'm just going to take you through from start to finish the signal path, and then we can go through some of the tones. So first things first, I have my PRS DGT. This is one of my favorite guitars because it does a great job at doing single coil sounds as well as humbucker sounds. So if you need something that's kind of an all-in-one, this is definitely a great guitar for that. We're then going to go first thing into my input buffer. As I said, part of the holy trinity of tone, having high quality input and output buffers. We're hitting our buffer first. This is one of our DIY buffers, and if you want to check that out, you can check this video out, or linked in the description will be a bunch of different DIY buffers that we offer. This is one of those. Then it goes into a Boss T3. This is my tuner, and this is the Wazacraft version, and I like the Wazacraft version because it allows me to have it in true bypass. Normally, if you got a Boss tuner, you would have a buffer in it. I don't like the buffers in the Boss pedals, so I just set this to true bypass. And then I go into my next pedal, which is the Vertex Boost. This is being used earlier on in the chain because I actually like using my Vertex Boost to add gain to other pedals because it's really clean and linear, and we'll show you a little bit of that in a second. Then I have my Rocket Archer, great kind of Klon style pedal. I really love stacking that with my Tube Screamer, which is right next to it, a TS10, a vintage Japanese one. Can't get away from that. One of my favorite guitar players, and John Mayer, uses these, and I'm following suit, following his lead on this. Great pedal. Then I have my Ultraphonics Overdrive. That is a Dumble style overdrive that's based on a Dumble Overdrive Special, with which we use several actual real examples to voice this pedal against. Then it goes upstairs to my Arion Stereo Chorus, then to my Steel String Supreme, which typically I'm leaving always on all the time just to kind of create a bass kind of fatness and a little compression to the tone, but I'll take us through one by one and not leave this on all the time to start. And then we go into the Collider, Reverb, and Delay. I love this pedal because not only does it do reverb, but it does delay, and I can have them all in one compact box, and it really sounds excellent. It actually really reminds me of a lot of those old Lexicon units, the PCM series units, and even can get some of those kind of Bricasti type sounds out of it. And for a small pedal like this, at the price point that it is and what it offers, it's an absolute no-brainer. And then I have a split output, so I can either go into my cab M from 2 notes if I want to go direct, or I can go back to an amplifier, and that's all done through my interface box, and head back to the Studio Pro 35 from 2Rock. So let's go through the actual sounds of this thing. We're going to start right in the beginning of the chain with my Vertex Boost. What I love about the Vertex Boost is if I set the control for the level to 0, so no boosting at all, and I hit this thing on and off, it doesn't change the tone whatsoever. Let me show you. Doesn't change the fundamental structure of the amplifier, of the sound, of anything. It just represents it exactly as it is. And then when I bring more level into it, it just makes her a really good pedal to add more gain to other devices without changing the fundamental tone of those. So I'll show you some stacked examples in a minute. Next pedal again is the Archer. And I kind of just set everything here just about at noon, and this is just a great kind of, I like it more on single coils than I do on humbuckers. So let me just go to a single coil sound. Neck pickup, let's see how we got. So that's my Archer Klon style pedal. Now, if I wanted to add a little bit more gain to that, but didn't want to change the fundamental structure, that would be a time that I would then bring in the Vertex Boost. But let's go on to my Tube Screamer, the TS10 classic Tube Screamer. Definitely does the BB Ray Shepherd, quote unquote, sound really well. But it's also just a great mid-range overdrive, always works well, especially with single coils. I use this almost all the time with my Strats. But let's do a little bit here on the DGT and see what it sounds like. Definitely kind of the Stevie Ray sound. Now, of course, I'm not really using a complementary guitar, but still delivers on the mid-range. I love the sound of these. They really do have a specific sound that's just a little bit different than what a TS-808 or a TS-9 would have. So for that reason, I like it. It's a great pedal. You know, certainly it can be a little finicky with the old foot switch, but nevertheless, still a great pedal. Now, next up, I got my Ultraphonics Overdrive. Now, this is a great overdrive if you want the Dumble overdrive sound. It's 3 knobs and the truth, and can really get you there. And again, as I said, we voiced this against some original Dumble overdrive special amplifiers. So we really did our homework on this to get it as close to the real deal as possible, even if you might be going through some dissimilar amps to what a Dumble might be based around. So this is one of my favorites. I'm going to go to my humbucking bridge position and kind of do a little bluesy type licks here because I just think it excels at that. It gets great feedback. Just an all-around great pedal. That feedback is just classic Dumble. The way that it just kind of hangs on those notes, you can just really get into feedback so easily. Just really gets that beautiful sustain that is so quintessentially Dumble. I love this pedal, just sounds incredible. I can't get enough of it. Next, we're going to go on to my analog stereo chorus. This was an old signature pedal that I actually had out several years ago. It doesn't exist anymore, but it's kind of had a cult following ever since. It's become sort of what was dubbed on Reverb as the Klon of choruses. Some of these have gone up as high as $600 or $800 for a pedal that was originally, I think, $200 at market. So it definitely has gone crazy. It sounds great, and definitely kind of encompasses that 80s vibe of just hi-fi, beautiful chorus tones. So I'll play a little bit of that for you. I'm going to go to my neck pickup and go to the single coil tone. Definitely nails those 80s vibes. It's got a lot of kind of almost like a vibrato that's kind of happening to it. Almost is a little bit of a flange to it as well. Just love this pedal, love what it does. Loves that it has just a little bit of clipping no matter how you set it. It's just kind of like, it's cool in its inefficiencies and what it is that it does. I can't get over this pedal. I use it all the time. I absolutely love the stereo chorus, which is our modded version of the Arion chorus. Next, we have my Steel String Supreme. This is a pedal that I really can't live without. Ordinarily, when I'm playing anywhere or even just at home, I just have to have this thing on. I haven't had it on so far, but this is just kind of like the best sort of just baseline for tone to stack anything else into. It just kind of makes everything before it sound better. So I have both channels on this. I kind of have everything right about at noon, both toggles in the middle, and this is just kind of a good straight ahead setting. I'll switch between humbuckers and single coils so you can kind of hear it through both. Let me start with single coils and we can kind of just get a little bit of the vibe. adds that compression, it adds that fullness. If I turn it off, bring it back in, it just brings that fatness back. And even if you're doing a lead tone on this and you just want to get a little bit more fatness to your note and still kind of keep it semi-clean, it's just so nice at that. It just adds that slightest bit of grit, and of course you can control it because we have independent volume controls for the input gain and the output gain, and then I can also add more saturation to it by cranking the output gain. Let me just give you kind of more of an extreme setting if I wanted to kind of almost use this pedal as an overdrive. Last but not least, we got our collider, reverb, and delay. Now, I just leave this thing on all the time, and I actually have been leaving it on this entire time that we've been playing through the 2-rock amplifier. It is so good at what it does. As I said earlier, it cops a lot of those old school studio vibes. And I just leave the plate reverb on almost all the time. If I have a little bit of spring coming from the amp, I'll leave that and include that. And then maybe just leave this on a slight tape delay, maybe a little analog delay. Just keep it really, really simple. And man, it just sounds so good. You're just bringing in a little bit of those clean. Just gives you the subtlety that you want with still being present in bringing in just the right amount of warmth and not really any digital artifact here at all. It really just sounds natural and how it's supposed to sound and really gives you that tape essence and really gives you that kind of studio quality version of a plate reverb. So I can't get enough of this thing. I absolutely love it. And we didn't talk about the 2 notes cab M. This is something that I use a lot if I'm going direct. Today I'm just going into this amplifier here, this beautiful 2-rock amplifier. Sounds great, but if I am going direct, this is an absolute best way for me to do it. It can very much resemble the sound of a Fender style amp, especially when I'm using my Steel String Supreme, which is designed to go direct. If I'm using those 2 and then stacking in all of my other pedals, I can really get some very convincing sounds that would be very akin to what I'm getting here out of this amplifier or a lot of the classic Fender amplifier sounds, knowing that that's kind of what the Dumble Steel String Singer was, just a bigger, fatter kind of Fender amplifier on steroids with some additional tweaks. Obviously, it's a Dumble after all, but still can get us in that territory and be a great device to stack other pedals on top of. So that was my personal pedal board. Again, we used the Vertex pedalboard platform, a tiered system, which you can definitely check out right on our website and will be linked below. Of course, all of the devices that we talked about will also be linked below if you want to check those out. They're all excellent. Again, don't forget about the holy trinity of tone, high quality switch mode power supplies, high quality shielded soldered cables, and high quality input and output buffers. Again, I got recommendations for you listed in our description, so you can check those out, check out what we recommend, and see what's going to work best for your budget and price point. I hope you dug my little run through of my pedal board. Again, I haven't done this very many times over the last decade, but this is one that's definitely going to withstand the test of time. I have vetted these pedals heavily, and this is just the stuff that I go after. It's very simple. Everything's in series, all in front of an amplifier. Really not a lot to go wrong here, but man, it really delivers on the tone. So I love it for that reason. If you like what you saw today, I highly recommend that you like, you subscribe, you leave us a comment, tell me what you think about my rig. Are there some things that I should be changing out or some things that I didn't consider? If you have anything on your rig that you're considering swapping out for maybe one of these, we'd love to talk to you, tell us our experience and where we think some of these might be helpful for you in kind of getting the sound that you hear in your head. Also, if you want to get in touch with us and get help from us on your rig, we offer these services through Patreon, so you can feel free to check that out in the description. We have memberships starting as low as $5 a month and up to $50 a month, where you can get one-on-one coaching with me, the rig doctor, if you so desire. Also, if you want to support us, we have merch listed right below this video that you can get through Teespring. In addition, you can go to our website, vertexeffects.com, pick up one of these pedal boards, or pick up any of our pedals. That goes a long way in supporting us. Until next time, I'm Mason Marangella from Vertex Effects, aka the Rig Doctor. Thanks for checking out my new pedal board. See ya.